this is why I say that this is potentially the biggest conspiracy ever, because you look at this and the real story of the plane is one of a fire event. The flight path going to Penang, 500 pounds of lithium ion batteries, 19 witnesses that either see the plane on fire, hear loud noises, see the plane descending, consistent with what you would do in a fire scenario, or Catherine T., who's in the Nicobar Islands and sees the plane glowing orange, flying low with smoke coming out of the back of it.
All right, we are joined today by Ashton Forbes for what may be my most difficult interview ever. For multiple reasons. Not that Ashton is a difficult person or anything like that. He's just a very bright person. And just from the exposure I have seen, I already know that I am going to be way out of my depth of knowledge, etc. And what I have seen is Ashton's claims are literally mind-blowing. So there's a lot going on here. How are you doing today, Ashton?
Hey, Eric. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm doing great and looking forward to this conversation.
On this particular topic, I am definitely ill-informed. So at times I may say, please talk to me like I'm 6 years old. I apologize ahead, but let's go into it. This is about the infamous flight MH370.
The Boeing 777 plane carrying 239 people left Kuala Lumpur on March 8, 2014, but disappeared from the radar shortly after and never made it to its destination in Beijing. There was no distress call, no indications of bad weather or technical faults before it vanished.
I think even Don Lemon, has been mocked for statements that he's made about it.
What if it was hijacking or terrorism or mechanical failure or pilot error? But what if it was something fully that we don't really understand? A lot of people have been asking about that, about black holes and on and on and on and all of these conspiracy theories. Let's look at this. Noah says, what else can you think about? Black hole, Bermuda Triangle.
You came on my radar from an individual who studies a lot of body language, statement analysis, and things of that sort. And the fact that he was endorsing you, and as somebody who literally studies liars, makes me go, I should talk to this guy. So what got you on the track of this flight?
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is whether or not I'm right or wrong, I'm definitely not a liar. And I think that I go out of my way to show that by being very active on social media, engaging at every single podcast request that I can accommodate, live streaming, a lot of my initial research, as well as almost every night, so that people can see that I'm an authentic person. Because when people are liars, like they get caught in a web of lies and have to be careful about what lie they say here or there. For me, I've always been interested in mysterious plane crashes and trying to figure out how they crash. I like Malcolm Gladwell when he talks about like tipping point and things that like the types of stuff it takes for accidents to happen. And I remember I followed MH370 10 years ago, and I was never very comfortable with what was going on. There was all this obfuscation around, like every day there was something new we were finding. Oh, we're searching the South China Sea. Now we're searching over in the Malacca Straits and the Andaman Sea. And then now it's all of a sudden in the South Indian Ocean. And even before I got really involved in this last year, I knew the United States government must know more about what happened to this plane. I knew our surveillance capabilities. I didn't know exactly what they were back then, but they must be pretty advanced. So when I saw the MH370 videos reemerge on the social media site Reddit last year, I was very intrigued because I had remembered seeing the drone video back in 2014 when I was just a casual observer of the disappearance of the plane. And like many people even now, I had dismissed it. I thought that has to be fake. I didn't know how it could be fake, but I just thought it has to be fake. And the thing that changed my mind right away when I saw the second video. I didn't realize there was a second video that was in perfect synchronization with the first, that there's no discrepancies on a single frame in either video. And that's the part where something this incredible deserves to be investigated, especially because of the implications of it. And the part where I started to get really, let's say, activist about it is when we realized that I had been looking at the videos independently while the Reddit community and social media community on Twitter and 4chan even actually were looking into all the details. And I had noticed that it wasn't somebody who had filmed the drone or the satellite video with a camera. It wasn't someone sitting there with a camera filming it. You didn't see the computer screen like you often see on some of these leaks. It was actually somebody who had cropped the screen. And we could tell because you could see this mouse come in from the top right and go off the screen on the bottom left, which indicates we're looking at a cropped field of view. And I thought, wow, that's a weird detail to add if this is a hoax video. And at the same time, the people on social media had figured out that the mouse itself was at 24 frames per second. And the background is only 6 frames per second, which is indicative of a remote terminal Citrix session. Somebody actually logged in to a real database. So if people don't know what that means, is that when you work for a big company, what you normally do is you log in using Citrix to their environment to access their databases. And this is exactly how we imagine we're able to deduce that the spy satellite system works. Is it's a ground-based computer system that pulls satellite data all the time and is building a rendered 3D environment that people can then use to track missiles, planes, boats, anything the military wants to track. And when I saw that, I went, wow, I was like, this is like, that to me was already like hard evidence that what we're looking at here is real. I don't know how anyone could even imagine faking that.
A couple things. Real quick.
Sure.
Citrix essentially is acting as a dumb terminal to a mainframe. And in the case of satellite footage or whatever, there would be a server farm or something of that sort, probably collecting the data. And nobody would be directly logged into it. They would all be going in through windowing or Citrix sessions, I believe is what you're describing. Now, really quickly, before we get too deep into the videos and things like that, let's just step back. Can we talk about what is the narrative of the flight?
Well, there's the official story is that we don't know what happened to the plane. If you go look it up right now, that's the official story is they just don't know, which is pretty damn odd. Planes don't just disappear, not in 2014 with all the surveillance capabilities that we have out there. But the narrative that most people are familiar with is this idea that the pilot took control of the plane and flew it into the South Indian Ocean, which is easily disproved. It's not even necessarily something that the pilot can actually do, which is make a plane go entirely dark. The officials have actually ruled out the pilot, saying that they're not under the impression it's something that could be pulled off by them. The pilot's mental health screen was clean. The families supported him. The coworkers said he's a great guy. So, yeah, the situation as well with the flight path is that if you're going to crash a plane or suicide a plane, you just crash it. If you look up other incidents where it happened, like the Germanwings incident in 2015, the guy locked out the co-pilot and crashes the plane in under 10 minutes. When you look at the flight path, you see that this flight turned around and it went directly to Penang, which is the closest airport that you would go to land a Boeing 777. In addition to that, the flight simulator data, people think, oh, well, he practiced this route. The FBI and Malaysian government ruled out the simulator data. Even more so, we can prove that it's not true because we looked at the simulator data and there's analysis out there. If you just Google MH370, it turns out that it was literally MH370 from Kuala Lumpur to Jeddah that he was practicing on February 2nd and February 3rd. He was scheduled to fly that route February 4th. And so what some of these, I use the term journalist very loosely here. Some of these investigators into the case originally falsely compared that flight path because it goes northwest to part of the flight path of what the plane actually took. And they say, oh, this proves that he was practicing that, but that's a lie. So this goes to show that there is some major mystery around this, and only a few countries have the capability to obfuscate to this level. This is why I say that this is potentially the biggest conspiracy ever, because you look at this and the real story of the plane is one of a fire event. The flight path going to Penang, 500 pounds of lithium ion batteries, 19 witnesses that either see the plane on fire, hear loud noises, see the plane descending, consistent with what you would do in a fire scenario, or Catherine T., who's in the Nicobar Islands and sees the plane glowing orange, flying low with smoke coming out of the back of it. All these witnesses had to be discredited in order to come up with this cover story of it going into the South Indian Ocean.
Okay, can you define the fire event?
Yeah. So right away, one of the things that sticks out is that you find out that the Malaysian CEO lied on March 13th, saying there was no dangerous cargo on board the airplane. And then it wasn't until March 20th, 2014, where they admitted that there was at least 500 pounds of lithium ion batteries in the cargo bay. These have been outlawed since then in the passenger.
Why were they there?
Well, that's a good question. Presumably, they're being shipped to Beijing. But that's the big question: is that if you are a believer of the narrative and story that I've put forth, this was some type of espionage event, and these batteries have a very specific purpose, which is to ignite at that certain point and divert the plane back the other direction, potentially towards the rendezvous point that we see in the MH370 videos. It's very suspicious that you have these very extremely dangerous batteries that managed to miss 2 security screenings on board this plane. We found out that 2 pallets of them were also in the forward cargo bay right next to the MEC, the main equipment center, also known as the electronics bay. So you imagine if those batteries exploded and ignited, they could have easily damaged the electronics bay, causing this plane to go dark. I was always suspicious of those batteries. And it wasn't until I found out about Catherine T that we were able to piece it together, because Catherine T sees a glowing orange plane. Well, the Halon 1301 fire extinguishing devices have bromine in them, which is a halogen gas. If you go look at a halogen lamp and compare it to Catherine T's sightings from her old blog posts, you'll see it's a perfect match of a halogen lamp. So the idea here is that the Halon fire extinguishing devices, which can last for up to 3 hours, were battling this cargo bay fire. And there was a chemical reaction that's releasing bromine for an hour, enough so that Catherine T sees this glowing orange halo around the plane. To me, the fire scenario is indisputable. And the only reason why the experts have all dismissed it is because they've all believed that these satellite pings that say that the plane went into the South Indian Ocean must be accurate. But we looked all up and down the 7th arc, where these experts used a novel analysis to determine where the plane must have gone, and we didn't find anything. We didn't find one piece of the plane down there. We didn't find any black boxes. We found absolutely nothing. I looked at the satellite pings myself, and you can see right at 1840 UTC, when this plane is in the Nicobar Islands, the data after that is only 10 rows of data for the next 5 hours. Before that, it's hundreds of rows.
Why is that significant that there's few rows and versus many rows?
The experts would say that the ACAR system was turned off at 1707, which is about 10 minutes before the plane goes dark.
What is the ACAR system?
ACARS is the tracking system that they use on the computers in order to the flight management system, I believe. Oh, actually, the FML is a different one, but the ACARS is basically the computer system that's pinging nonstop and sending this data. But the data from 1707 to 1840, where the plane is then over the Nicobar Islands, is full, hundreds of rows of data out there that you can watch. You scroll down through it. But then once you get to 1840, the next ping is 1941. It's just 2 rows of data. Then 2041, 2 rows of data. 2141 until 2315. And there's also a pattern in that data. It seems to change. Like if anyone's familiar with databases or Excel spreadsheets, you can look at that right away and go, this seems odd. All of a sudden, the data becomes very sparse. And I've confronted the experts and said, why is this change right here? And they say, well, the ACAR system was turned off. And I go, well, but the ACAR system was turned off at 1707, not at 1840. So why is the data full up till that point?
Because I'm lost on that.
Sure.
If it was off, there should be no rows, right?
Well, that's the thing that's also unclear. Like I can't get a straight answer from the supposed experts about what we would expect if it's off or if it's on. What I can say is that if the argument is that it was turned off at 1707, then I expect consistency in the data between 1707 and the time after that. And that there's not. The inconsistency happens at 1840. So if there was some explanation for why this should have changed at 1840, I would expect the ACAR system to have been turned off at 1840 or some other event to have happened at 1840. The point being, when you look at the flight path and you see this plane flying up to Beijing, cut back across Malaysia, go to Penang, and then it goes up the Malacca Straits and Nicobar Islands, and then all of a sudden it takes a sharp turn down. The point where you see this deviation in the data is the exact point where this plane turns down in the South Indian Ocean. The argument that I'm presenting is it just never turned into the South Indian Ocean. You ignore those 10 rows of data where we never found the plane in the South Indian Ocean, and now the obvious scenario is an emergency fire event where this plane ends in the Nicobar Islands. And the reason why that has to be obfuscated is because if that happened, where'd the plane go? Why is there not a plane in the Nicobar Islands? Well, we have 2 videos showing it disappearing in the same location where Catherine T sees it on the ground. And we have a Mayday call only reported in China Times. You guys can find it. It's only in Chinese, not reported in Western media. that claimed that China had intercepted a communication from the Thai embassy from Malaysian Airlines MH370, saying that the plane was disintegrating and attempting an emergency landing, which is consistent with two videos that we have, as well as the eyewitness testimony from Catherine T. in the same location.
Okay, so just so I'm clear on all this, your contention is that the sparse data that actually is there was potentially added after the fact to give breadcrumbs for the plane to be somewhere else by manipulating the record or doing something, inserting this extra data. That's number one. And then number two, I guess, is who actually controls that tracking system and who has the capability of turning it on and turning it off, and what are the procedures as to why it would be turned on or off? I would think you would have tracking on all the time.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on those systems, so we'll have to ask the experts if you want to talk to them about how it can be turned off or on or what have you. All I know is that they've argued that it was turned off. The New York Times actually asked the Malaysian Minister of Transport, I think it was the next day, is it even possible for an airplane to go dark? Is that even a thing that you can do, is just turn off all the electronic signals? They wouldn't even answer the question.
Is it possible for a 777 to turn off all of its diagnostic information that it regularly sends out? I mean, is that actually technically possible that it would, A, disappear from the radar, but also all of this diagnostic information that's routinely sent out would just cease? Is there a button that you can press to do that?
I think that is something that we are all like to know the answers as well, and we are investigating on that matter. And we are talking to the experts from the airline, and also we will get assistance from Boeing, in fact, on this matter. That will be part of the investigation.
Wouldn't it be just a basic question? Can an aircraft disappear into thin air?
I just cannot speculate something that we are not sure. Now, it's better that we get from the right resources, from what is the technicalities of the aircraft. I think we have to be fair to us. We have to look at every angle of this investigation. We just cannot do something very fragmentary or piecemeal investigation.
You can't just simply turn everything off like that. Rolls-Royce engine data should have been transmitting nonstop. Rolls-Royce has never made their information public. In fact, they had come out, a Wall Street Journal article had supposedly talked to Rolls-Royce, and they were making the claim that this plane had still had some engine data that was transmitting, and then all of a sudden that had to be retracted. To me, it's very obvious that either those pings are falsified, they're either or misinterpreted. I don't know the exact nature of what happened. All I know is that we never found a plane in the South Indian Ocean where those pings supposedly should be able to pinpoint the location of that plane based on this analysis. So, to me, that's the part where I think that if you look at the flight path and you take away those pings out there, that shows that, we have a completely different event on our hands at that point. And just to add to it, we found the surveillance capabilities of the United States government. So we have something called SBIRS system, which is what I was talking about before regarding the ground-based computer systems that have satellites all over the world, scanning the entire world all the time.
SBIRS is the nation's next generation of space-based infrared surveillance. The program has already proven its value with successful HEO payloads on orbit. With deployment of the GEO spacecraft, SBIRS will be an unprecedented resource as the nation's global, taskable, and persistent infrared monitoring sentinel.
We found USA 229, which is a NOS, Naval Ocean Surveillance Spy Satellite, in the Malacca Straits at the exact time when Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was in the Nicobar Islands there, staring down right at the plane. So the United States government knows, no doubt whatsoever, whether or not this plane turned into the South Indian Ocean or not. Shouldn't even be an issue of a question. We found out about the SOSA system, the sound surveillance system that uses acoustic detectors. That was the one that heard the Titan sub. They have acoustic systems within Diego Garcia as well as Western Australia. Absolutely would have heard the plane crash. And then we also found out about the over-the-horizon radar, which can see thousands of miles, which means that at least Pine Gap military base and Diego Garcia would have had the capability to track the plane start to finish. Also, the JORN system, Jindali Operational Radar Network, which is in Australia, is supposedly also an over-the-horizon system, over-the-horizon radar system that would have seen the plane if it had gone in the South Indian Ocean. So we know for sure that we would have tracked it. So why did we not find anything down there? And people would say, well, there was some debris. Debris washed up in Africa. Yeah, it washed up in Africa, not Australia, 2,000 to 3,000 miles away. It's actually impossible for most of that debris to have drifted from the supposed crash site in the South Indian Ocean to Africa. And even the flaperon wasn't even connected with a unique serial number. The media doesn't tell you that. But even if that is MH370, that's the scenario I put forth is not inconsistent at all. In fact, the flaperon, they did this modeling, but the problem was the flaperon on the model was sticking out of the water like this. And they're like, oh, that's great because we can blow it and it will explain how it got to the Reunion Islands. The problem is there's barnacles on the part that they claim was out of the water, which is impossible.
A piece of wing on Reunion Island, it's very hard to trace back to exactly where it crashed.
If you mean exactly within, 10 miles, even 100 miles, you're right. But to say it generally came from the Eastern Indian Ocean is definitely possible.
Marine biologists will take a hard look at the sea life from the age and type of barnacles and microorganisms for clues.
And furthermore, they looked at the barnacles, and the barnacles only had 4 months of growth on them, but they claimed that the flaperon was in the water for 16 months. So if it was 4 months, there's no way it could have drifted 2,000 miles to get to Reunion Islands. But I have a better location for where that debris could come from. It's called Diego Garcia Military Base, which is halfway from the supposed crash site to Africa. So that's just some additional evidence that I think conclusively shows this plane couldn't have crashed in the South Indian Ocean. The United States government knows exactly what happened to it, and that the more likely location for this plane, if it did crash, I would say somewhere much further west near the Maldives. But I personally believe this plane got to Diego Garcia and potentially was ripped apart.
Now, you said something earlier that sticks in my mind, and I don't know the details on how plane crashes work, but you said that they said it was disintegrating. Is it possible that it could have disintegrated to an extremely high degree and there just was nothing to crash, or very, very little debris left? It just
I think the debris that was found is actually consistent with the disintegration, the fire event. A B777 fire suppression device washed up in the Maldives has a visible serial number on it. The officials just didn't even address it. They just said, we're not going to look at that. It's not part of MH370. It was actually reported on as a bomb, even though it's obviously a B777 fire suppression device. 20 islanders in the Maldives reported seeing MH370 on a tiny island that only has 3,000 people in the early morning hours flying south towards Diego Garcia. So I think that the debris that was out there is only consistent with the story that I've put forth. None of the other stories are consistent with where the debris showed up. Some of the debris even has visible scorch marks on it. I've showed this as well. It's obviously scorch marks. Like if you put fire to something and you see this scorch mark appear on the debris. So the thing with the fire, people say is, well, it would burn up too quickly. But actually, I think people say that because they haven't looked into how the fire suppression systems work. The fire suppression systems automatically deploy right away, and they'll put out the fire. And lithium ion battery fires, the issue is that you can put them out, but they just come back up again. It's called thermal runaway.
Now, during a thermal runaway, you start off with a battery failure, a single battery cell. And that cell, you have no chance of extinguishing.
So you have this idea where the automatic suppression system is going to put out the fire. It's going to come back up again. And then they have these low rate ones where they then can last for up to 3 hours. So you can imagine a scenario where the automatic ones do high flow rate. They put out the fire. Crew is freaking out. They're going to go down there. They're going to start pouring water on it, which is what you're supposed to do for lithium ion battery fires. You're going to have this chemical reaction happening, and then they're trying to keep that fire at bay as best as they can so the plane doesn't literally fall apart or get holes burnt into it and become destabilized.
The only thing you can do is stop the propagation. In a cascading thermal runaway, you have one cell that fails, it heats up, it thermally damages all the cells around them. They fail. You keep having cells that are in contact with each other fail.
And then they're going to also depressurize the plane because the halon fire extinguishing devices absorb oxygen. It takes oxygen out of the environment. And in fact, it was just recently shown that the turn back, when the plane goes dark and turns back around, they did an emergency descent as well. Some of the experts reanalyzed the radar pings and found that they took an emergency descent, which is exactly what you would do in the fire scenario if you're a pilot. So then that's where I think there was also 8 fishermen on a boat 10 minutes after the plane goes dark that see the plane flying low, which corroborates that again with eyewitness testimony. So to me, it's just undeniable that it was a fire. And then, the only thing you have to, for the story that I put forth, the only thing you have to throw out is those satellite pings where we see this anomalous 10 rows of data. Whether or not the United States government fabricated those, misinterpreted, spoofed them, there's a lot of different theories out there. I don't personally care what they did with it, but what I strongly believe is that the United States government took them about 5 days to come up with a cover story. And on March 13th, the United States unnamed intelligence sources went to the media and said this plane went into the South Indian Ocean. The reason why they did that is they needed to send people on a wild goose chase where they knew they would never find anything down there. And then it wasn't until May 28th, 2014, roughly almost 90 days later, 90 days later, that they Inmarsat finally released the first 47-page report with the raw telemetry data. The problem is the MH370 satellite video that has coordinates in the bottom left that indicate the real location of the plane in the Nicobar Islands where it turned to the South Indian Ocean, that was published on May 19th, 9 days before that data. So unless the person that made these videos has the ability of precognition, there's no way they could have known where to put that plane. They just as easily would have put that plane in the South China Sea or the South Indian Ocean, but why did they put it directly there in the Nicobar Islands? Because that's where the plane ended up.
Okay, some other questions. So one of the big mysteries of this scenario is the massive amount of lithium ion that was on the plane, which doesn't belong. And I think you did say offhandedly, and I interrupted you, but was it that long after this flight that lithium ion, got limited to only 100 watts or whatever it is, and it had to be on the plane and not in the luggage compartment on planes?
Yeah, they're literally not allowed in the cargo bay of passenger planes at all. And if you go, next time you get on a flight, they will ask you when you check your bag if you have lithium ion batteries in your checked bag. So even a tiny lithium ion battery like this, they're afraid of. And we're talking about 500 pounds of these things stacked up on one another, unsafely stacked, I would add, because we've looked, if you go look at the official ATSB report, you'll see these are not safely packaged at all. Just loaded up in cardboard boxes on top of each other on a pallet out there. They were put together that day as well. If you even mail a letter at the post office, they'll ask you, even if it's just a little piece of paper and a letter, just like something I've got like this. They'll say, "Is there any lithium ion batteries in there?" You're like,
and they've got stickers on the side of the boxes whenever you order from Amazon or wherever.
And some of these planes burnt up. A bunch of planes burnt up between 2010 and 2014 as well. People even now don't realize how extremely dangerous lithium ion batteries are in the cargo bay of any plane, but let alone passenger ones. So I don't know. We had found evidence that they had outlawed them in 2015, but there's a bunch of different reports out there between like 2015, 2017, where they got much more visibility. If you look up the FAA's website, you'll actually find that even after they've outlawed them in the last 2 years, I think it's like 74 incidents in domestic flights in the United States alone where there's still been fires. Now we're talking about like people's cell phones in the passenger area up above that are like starting on fire, and they have these special bags that they put them in, and then they just pour water on them, and that's how they put them out. So it's happening even now, more than one per week. So these things are extremely dangerous, and anybody who's telling you differently, is potentially just kind of not really aware of all the dangers that are out there.
Okay, so that's the cargo. So the next question would be, and I have handedly heard you talk about it, what about the passenger manifest, as in who was on this flight of any significance? Were there anybody?
Yeah, and there is. And all this really surprised me because I was just a guy that came into this thinking we're going to find evidence these videos are fake, nothing's going to line up, that, these videos must have been shot or made to be shot in the South Indian Ocean. I thought that the pings were accurate when I first dug into this. Then we find out about those batteries. We find out that the pings look like extremely sketchy at a minimum. And then we look in the passenger manifest and we find out that there's 20 employees from a company called Freescale Semiconductors, which is an American company. And 8 of the people on board are Chinese nationals and 12 are Malaysian nationals. And when it comes to intellectual property theft, the number one target are Chinese nationals that work for American companies. $600 billion it costs United States companies every single year. Semiconductors and plasma physics are the secret to the technology we see in the videos. In the MH370 videos, we're seeing floating orbs, I call them, superconductive harmonic orbs. But really, it's a plasma field around a smaller object. And if you look up hypersonic weapons, you will find that hypersonic weapons use a plasma sheath in front of them in order to be able to achieve these hypersonic speeds that they do. And I think that what we're looking at in these videos is United States hypersonic weapons. And I don't think it's any coincidence that there's 20 people from this Freescale Semiconductor company that were all supposedly very important people, according to the news reports about them. Way too many people from one company to be on the same plane.
Were they scientists specifically?
Yeah, they were engineers, and supposedly they were going to China to upgrade the plants in China as well. At least that's the cover story. There's FSB, which is Russia's like FBI report out there that people just thought was disinformation. But it actually literally says that the United States Navy took this plane and the Russia doesn't know why, and that China was actually going to divert the plane due to the people on board. And it even speculates that the United States put cargo on the plane for a specific reason that came from the Alabama Maersk, which is famous for the Captain Phelps movie with Tom Hanks in it. And actually, 2 Navy SEALs mysteriously overdosed a couple months earlier that were guarding cargo on that boat that were working for a company called Trident. And their story is extremely suspicious. The families related to those SEALs say that they never do drugs, and somehow they both overdose simultaneously. So there's a lot of really, really weird stuff going on here. But one thing I'm sure about is the Freescale Semiconductor scientists are connected to this. The story that I put forth is one of espionage or counter-espionage, which is definitely hard to believe, but you can imagine that, especially this is my own government I'm talking about here, and I don't want to think that we are this potentially evil and nefarious, but the evidence, the story that fits the best is one where we set these batteries on this plane, potentially even ignited them at a specific point in time when the plane was at its weak point between radars to have the longest time for people to react, and then diverted that plane intentionally, maybe even took over the plane after it got to Penang because it doesn't land there for whatever reason, and sent it to the rendezvous point where we had our hypersonic weapons ready to, there's not an easy way to put this, warp drive the plane somewhere else. People call it teleportation, but really it's manipulation of space-time itself. And then we warp this plane somewhere to the west, consistent with the right-hand rule when we see these orbs spin around the plane. And when we look at the right-hand rule, the vector direction of the travel is backwards. We see the plane traveling east. That means this plane is going to go to the west. And what's west of the Nicobar Islands? Well, the Maldives are. Exactly the place where the B777 fire suppression device washed ashore, where the 20 islanders saw the plane flying towards Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is the location where basically every conspiracy theory out there about this plane says this plane ended up. So I can't prove that's where the plane ended up, but it's consistent with where the debris washed ashore. And if I was a betting person, if I'm in Vegas or whatever, I'm putting it all on Diego Garcia, and I'm just saying, okay, flip over your hand. Let me see what you got.
All right, we got ahead because I definitely wanted to dig into that theory. We've let it slip ahead of time, but let's back up another step. The videos that were leaked online, what was the source, or who was the source for these videos?
So we went back to the Wayback Machine because the YouTube channel has been deleted since this has all been uncovered in 2023. The account name was Regicide Anon for the earliest one that we could find. We looked back to find if there were earlier versions. There might be. If so, all traces of them have been wiped out. But Regicide Anon first uploaded the video. It was published May 19th, 2014. The satellite video was. In the description of that video, it says received March 12th, 2014, which is 4 days after the plane disappeared. And it says source protected. We looked at their other videos from their YouTube channel. None of them have information like this in terms of like some of them say source email submission and things like that. This seems to just be a random UFO account, not necessarily the person who leaked these videos. They just found them somewhere. In fact, there was a higher quality version of the satellite video. The Regicide Anon version is 3D stereoscopic, which means there's 2 videos with slightly different angles, which is what USA 229, the spy satellite we found, has capability of doing, which is a sister satellite right next to it that could do that. But then there's one higher quality video that has just one video without the side-by-side that was published, I believe, in June, somewhere between June and August. I'd have to find the exact date. But since it's higher quality and you can't make a higher quality video from a lower quality video, this would indicate that neither of these is the original source. People have speculated that the videos got published to a forum or the dark web somewhere, and these people picked it up and they uploaded it. The drone video. So we have two videos in perfect synchronization. One, they're from two completely different angles. One is from one side of the plane, angled down like low Earth orbit satellite would look, and then the other one's from the drone, an MQ-1C Gray Eagle, looking horizontally at the plane from the other perspective on the other side.
What was the drone doing there?
Sorry, what?
What was the drone doing there?
Yeah, so this is where, to me, it has to be espionage. It has to be an operation. And if you look at the drone video, you can clearly tell this is an operation because the drone is very close to the plane. This isn't a situation where the drone's seeing the plane in the distance. This drone goes underneath the wake of the plane. So to me, there's only two scenarios that make sense. One is that the fire was accidental, and that the United States government was reacting to the fire because this plane is doomed and it's going to try to land in the ocean and rip apart and everybody's going to drown. And that's what I thought for the longest time. But it didn't fit with all the evidence as well as the story of espionage. The story of espionage would say this event was planned for months, that they knew these people were going to be on this plane. They knew exactly when they were going to be there. They knew they were defecting to China, that China was trying to steal this intellectual property from Freescale Semiconductors, potentially the exact technology used on the plane, and that they had set the assets in the location. Now, there also was the Cobra Gold and Cope Tiger exercises that were going on in that area. So these are yearly exercises that the United States does, military exercises. The theme of the Cope Tiger exercises, which were slated to begin March 10th, just 2 days after this plane disappears, was actually search and rescue that year. I have FOIA'd the Navy for a list of the assets that were in the area because I want to figure out if they have MQ-1C Gray Eagles that were around there that could have been filming it.
Okay, so the drones weren't happenstance. Either way you look at it, you're saying that either, oh my God, we're losing track of this plane, let's fire a drone up there very quickly to see if we can catch what's going on, or the drone was there the whole time surveilling the plane for whatever reason it was surveilling.
Yeah, the drone can't catch the plane, and it doesn't have as high altitude capability as the plane. So it's not a situation where the drone was just randomly there and catching the plane. It was definitely a planned operation one way or another, either a rescue operation or a counter-espionage operation, however you want to think of it. That's really the only stories that make sense regarding the drone video being there and checking it out. We also can tell it's low altitude. Some people say, well, the drone can't fly that high. Can't be real. But we can tell because we see cumulus clouds in both videos that this is a low altitude. This is under 10,000 feet that we're looking at in these videos, which also tells us that we are not seeing contrails come out of the back of the plane. It's literally impossible for those to be contrails coming out of the back of the plane in both these videos. That's smoke coming out of the plane from the lithium ion battery fire. And some people say, well, you can't see the smoke in infrared cameras, but we're dealing with multispectral military grade cameras here that definitely have the capability to see smoke. It's not like off the shelf commercial grade equipment. We actually even found this Westcam MX25 where there's an example of it from 2015 that shows basically identical video capabilities to what we see in our drone as well. So I think we've essentially identified every asset, identified the cameras. We've even identified how the satellite capabilities work with the CIBR system and the ground-based computers. It actually integrates with real Google Earth as well as something called Quick Terrain Modeler that was brought to my attention. We looked it up, and the military, DoD, and intelligence communities use this Quick Terrain Modeler and integrate it with Google Earth, and this is how they track objects. So we deduced the capabilities and then found out that's actually how they really work.
Okay, so I'm going to circle back again, though. Sure. Do you have a name of a person or people who could have actually leaked? Because I would imagine this is not publicly available information, you know, for a FOIA or anything else. You said there was a screenshot of a Citrix session showing a mouse. It was deliberately cropped. That implies an individual had done this and had put this out there. Do you have any theories or?
Not only do I have theories, not only do we have a list, I have the actual guy who leaked these videos. I couldn't believe we found it. So there's people out there that think these videos are fake, that somebody CGI'd them, that these random YouTubers have found assets that match, and somehow that means these videos are fake. But nobody has produced a hoaxer with any evidence, any credible evidence that they made these videos. Meanwhile, I was able to find and identify with an extremely high degree of certainty the guy that leaked these videos. It took a couple weeks, dug around, had to dig through Google, change all the date ranges around, look for people that had been charged with, espionage and retention of classified information, dissemination. And then I hit pay dirt. Lieutenant Commander Edward C. Lynn, somebody that nobody really knows about. All the news stories about him are really odd and obfuscated. They won't say exactly what it was that he leaked. They throw random prostitution charges on a guy that is facing espionage and life in prison to just try to discredit him that's out there. I FOIA'd the FBI and NCIS. FBI rejected my FOIA for personal information reasons. The NCIS rejected it in total under an Obama era exemption to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. When you look at the videos, you can tell this is a U.S. military personnel is the person that leaked them. There had to probably be an operator because they knew enough about the systems to remove the HUD data. They were trying to protect U.S. intelligence by cropping the satellite video to take out the drone and potentially other assets. They may not even have wanted to leak the drone video, but only leak the drone video because people didn't take the satellite video seriously enough. They probably had an emotional reaction to what they were looking at based on Regis Adnan saying that they received the footage 4 days later. You can imagine somebody looks at a plane disappearing and they go, oh my God, what just happened? I've got to tell the world about this. Otherwise, they're never going to figure it out. They probably had to convince Regis Adnan that the videos were authentic because Regis Adnan supposedly received this footage on March 12th, but they didn't publish it until May 19th. So you can imagine if you receive this, you're like, no, this can't be real. And then the person's telling you it's real. I'm the guy that leaked this. I use these assets. So we start looking into the background of Lieutenant Commander Edward C. Lynn. Turns out he's on the Special Projects Patrol Squadron called the VPU-2 Wizards that flies in the most sensitive spy planes on the planet. Somebody actually just recently told me, too, that the VP squadrons actually have deployments in Diego Garcia as well, which, if true, is pretty damning. He would have flown on P-8 Poseidon as well as the Lockheed Martin EP-3 Ares II. That particular plane has real-time tactical SIG-INT, which is signals intelligence, and full motion video intelligence. And the crew fuses collected intelligence along with offboard data for battlefield situational awareness. The role of what his job was literally to be tracking planes just like this. The case against him got codename Rogue Archer, which I just think is interesting. The signals intelligence is how all these assets communicate wirelessly, like a military internet network. The drone, the satellite, the spy plane, this is how all this stuff comes together. The dates are extremely damning. He was deployed to the VPU-2 squadron in February of 2014. We got a quote from his lawyer in one of the articles that said the investigation began April 2nd, 2014, which, remember, if he was logged into that Citrix session, they're going to have logs for it. And I was looking for somebody who would have got caught pretty quickly because the moment they see this on the internet, they're going to be looking for who's the guy that potentially leaked this or had unauthorized access to the data. His Lieutenant Commander Edward C. Lynn's actual role was to relay information to upper command as well. So he would have been a guy in the right position to have access to all this footage. He would have been knowledgeable enough to know how to download it and potentially disseminate it.
And enough rank to maybe get it outside.
Yes, exactly. And then in May of 2014, he accidentally left two flight manifests in his flight suit that included deployments from search and rescue with search and rescue code names in them, which is the only search and rescue in that time period would have been MH370. There's even an article on the internet about his case where at the top, it has a picture of a P-8 Poseidon literally searching for MH370. It says in the caption. And I'm like, why is that on an article about this guy? Because people even just tangentially were putting the two and two together. But the real kicker is that the defense argued that the classified information in question is available on the internet that he leaked. He ended up taking a plea deal, only pleading to the charges that he was actually guilty of. His family came out with this big campaign about how he's being vilified. The lawyers argued that the prostitution charge and the other stuff that they're putting out there to the media was just obfuscation. The military was actually afraid that if the case went to court, they would have to make the information that he leaked publicly available. that they would have to say what it is. And if you look up similar cases for espionage, they have no problem talking about what people leaked. There's one recently where they're talking about exactly how much money China paid a guy to leak information out there. But for this guy, they won't say anything about it. And it's pretty obvious because if these videos are what this guy leaked and they were to admit to it, you have a lot of tough questions to answer about why we got crazy hypersonic orbs that can warp a plane from one location to the other. His charge sheet is heavily redacted. It was the first major incident of espionage in an active duty member of the Navy since the end of the Cold War. They were trying to get him in prison for life, but they ended up having to admit that there was no evidence whatsoever that he exchanged any information with anyone from China. But if you're the United States and you had this counter-espionage mission, and then you see these videos get leaked, you're going to think that the person that leaked them is spying for China because you're giving away all the secrets about the operation that we just did. But then you go and you talk to him and you find out, no, like he didn't even know possibly what he was looking at. And he was just trying to tell the world, like, this is what happened to MH370. Maybe he thought just some random orbs, wiped it out, zapped it or something like that. And that's why he potentially came out and then took the plea deal and admitted that what he did was wrong and that he wanted to be an example for anyone else who would do that. Because this was a guy that was, by all accounts, a patriot. And we trusted him with like nuclear weapons. So yeah, the United States had to admit that it wasn't even really a spy case in the end, which begs the question, if it wasn't even really a spy case, why is this information being held up from the FOIA request due to national security reasons and foreign policy?
I hate to go here, but I'm being realistic and my mind goes dark. Currently, we have issues with an airplane manufacturer, Boeing, and people who have been whistleblowing are no longer with us. So I don't know if anybody's ever asked you, but why is he still with us and why are you?
No, those are good questions. And part of the reason why I'm saying his name is to protect him. Because if all of a sudden there's an obituary about Edward C. Lynn, it's going to look extremely suspicious. Edward C. Lynn has not reached out to me to tell me to stop saying his name, despite the fact that I bring this up on many, many, many podcasts. If these videos are real, he is potentially in danger, and I'm potentially in danger. In fact, I've heard through back channels, people that are connected, that they are worried about me and the information that I'm disseminating. And this is part of the reason why I'm being so high profile about it. Is that, I don't care, even if it was, I'm not afraid. If I need to be a martyr for this information, for extremely hyper advanced technology, potentially free energy for the world, I can't think of any more noble cause. If I'm wrong about all this, then I have nothing to worry about. And if I'm right, then it was all worth it in the end. It's not as simple as just killing people these days. I was listening to former General Flynn talk about this a little bit. And one of the things he was saying is that we have so much forensic nowadays, and anyone else you include in something like this to silence someone or whatever is another loose end that you have to tie up. And you have to explain what happened to the person and why. If I were to disappear all of a sudden, it would be extremely, extremely suspicious given what I've been disclosing out there. But to your point, these Boeing whistleblowers are, having heart attacks and other stuff happen to them in very opportune times.
And it can be coincidence. Correlation doesn't mean causation.
Yeah. And I'm not accusing them directly. I do think it's really weird that Boeing planes are literally falling apart every single day now, and their whistleblowers are,
falling apart as well.
And I don't want that to happen to me as well. I've been very upfront with the government as well. If these are real, I would like for them to talk to me because I do not enjoy revealing these are probably the most top secret weapons in the United States arsenal. Like magnitudes more secret than nuclear weapons are, magnitudes more powerful than nuclear weapons are. I can understand why they want to keep them secret. I can even understand why we would want to keep free energy secret, because if you look at it from the perspective of people hiding it, they would think that we are going to destroy the entire planet. And I'm not talking about like shooting nukes at one another. I'm talking like press a button and the planet explodes type technology. That's how advanced this is. So it is the type of thing where you have to be very careful and measured about what your response is and how you reveal it. But to date, they have not attempted to reach out to me or, convince me that I shouldn't be disclosing this information. So until then, I'm going to keep pushing forward with it. I have given this information to the AARO, which is the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. I think they're the appropriate party because they're the ones that look into this UFO stuff that's out there. And while I don't think this is aliens or anything related to that, I do think this proves and shows that we have gravitational manipulation capabilities as well as space-time manipulation as hard as that is to believe. And they would be the ones that could look into the defense contractors. And from my first interaction with them, I talked to somebody, a lieutenant colonel. I'm not going to say their name because they asked me not to, but in January, I talked to them for the first time. And I gave them the verifiable information. I said, you can find Edward C. Lynn. They said, well, I wasn't unsure if they would be able to get the information. They said, well, we can get the classifications required to find out what it was that he leaked. So it's really just a simple yes or no. Like if he leaked these videos, boom, they're real. There's your proof. If for some reason these aren't what he leaked, well, then what did he leak that's available on the internet that we, even after a plea deal, gave him a 9-year sentence after a plea deal for like, what could be so serious that we would come down on him so hard even after we had to admit that he wasn't even a spy. To me, these videos are the only thing that match up. We even looked at his appeals. His appeals, he argued that he was way over sentenced, and he's right. Even other people that were convicted of espionage, like the one in February, I think it was, he only got like 2 years. That's convicted of actual espionage as opposed to Edward C. Lynn, where he just pled guilty to like, I think 2 counts of dissemination of classified materials. And we even looked at the penal codes. The penal codes of what he was convicted of are consistent with potentially being video evidence. So I think that the AARO, they've pretty much been ghosting me for the most part. There is one email that I would like to read because I think it is quite telling. They did respond back to me, and I've been sending them emails probably once every couple of weeks. They were supposed to send me a memorandum of record. They never did. They keep sending me like excuses about how they're busy or something like that. And they keep saying how they'll get back to me next week, and they never do. But then one day on April 11th, they replied back to me, which was almost a month ago now. And this was a very ominous email. Mr. Forbes, my apologies for the slow responses. AARO is researching several topics at the moment. Some of AARO's initial research into MH370 has revealed the U.S. government's search efforts after the airliner disappeared from radar. I believe the genesis and authenticity of the videos may be helpful. Can you confirm the date the videos were published to the Regicide Anon YouTube channel? And yes, a quick follow-up call may be helpful. And the reason why I read that is because I've been expecting them to come back and say, no, this is all fake, blah, blah, blah. We didn't have surveillance footage of the event. But if they did initial research already, and I had given them the videos, given them Edward C. Lynn, then they must have found something that they're interested in there. And this is the part where if these videos are real, like what can they even possibly say? The amount of evidence that I put forth in the story I put forth in my mind is unshakable. It's almost undeniable how much evidence. So there's not even a story that they can plausibly come up with that can cover this up at this point. I think their only response is to not respond at all. Because anything they say, even if they were to lie, I just compare it against my 17 pages of evidence to figure out, does this fit the story? And the only story in my mind that fits is that these videos are what happened to the plane.
Okay, now that was my question about safety. And then my next question, which I'm sure you see coming a mile away, is I looked it up and...
So this video is just a quick summary of the ways in which we know the videos are fake. First, this portal effect was found by Redditor IcySlide7698 to be made using modified stock footage from the 1990s. It's impossible for all these curves along the edges to match by accident, and in comparisons between other frames we see the internal details match. We know the stock footage is that old because it was used in a 1995 game called Killing Time for a portal effect. The stock footage is also used in the fake satellite video as found by Redditor Happy Grammy, where an overexposed version of this frame matches the portal effect. That should be enough. But then we also have the stabilization issue, where if we stabilize the plane, then the contrails jump around. I've looked at thousands of videos of contrails, and they just don't do this. This must be a tracking and compositing error, and also shows that the video is fake. There are a bunch of other issues, like the supposed stereo version being the same image left and right, just with a manual distortion. There are issues with the frame rate. The drone footage seems to be using a 3D model. The satellite footage is static when we'd expect motion from parallax with the clouds, and several other things. But really, the fact that both videos use stock footage should be all you need to demonstrate that these videos are what they appear to be, silly fakes, a distraction upon which I shall waste no more time.
This video was put together by an individual named Mick West, along with an article who wrote about this in the Skeptical Inquirer. And from what I've seen, and some of this is extremely recent, that Mick West, you've been back and forth with for a while, but then you also are debating publicly, I guess, if you will, with Kim.com. What are the claims of these folks, and what are your counters?
Yeah, and I have no problem if people want to believe these videos are real. They're not, or I mean, fake. If they want to believe, people want to believe the videos are fake, they absolutely can. These videos are real. Mick West is actually accounts for at least 3 of the 4 prominent debunks related to MH370. I think it's very odd that all debunks go back to one guy who is a unemployed serial debunker for the last 15 years that seems to have a vested interest in proving things to be fake. It actually goes all the way back to the Philip Wood EXIF data picture that shows that he potentially ended up in Diego Garcia. Mick West is the guy that tried to debunk that picture as well. He's been caught falsifying multiple debunks. The jittery contrails was the most recent one that we've proven beyond any doubt that Mick West falsified a fake debunk. They used stabilization software that inaccurately shifted the smoke trails behind the plane to make it look like they were not connected to the plane. We were able to prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that that's because of the stabilization software seeing the smoke as part of the background. And somebody proved that by shifting the video to black and white and then restabilizing it using the stabilizing software, and the disconnection goes away entirely. So Mick West doesn't have any credibility whatsoever when it comes to debunking or the MH370 videos. So that's 2 debunks. And then the third one is this Pyromania VFX debunk that showed up on Reddit on August 19th by a 1-day-old Reddit account. There's not a lot of people that would need to use a burner email account to push a debunk. Mick West is one of the only ones who would have to do that because his reputation is so bad that if people realized it was coming from him, it wouldn't have any credibility. So a 1-day-old account pushes it on Reddit, and the same day, and I have all the receipts, by the way, for this, the same day Mick West claims on his Metabunk website that he's the one who found it. He's the only real person who claims to have found it. And he says he found it in an obscure 3DO Killing Time video game from the 90s, which if Mick West does actually choose to debate me, he's dodged 4 debates. One of the first questions I'm going to ask him is, was he messing around with his old 3DO video games? How exactly did he find this Killing Time effect? So the thing about this Pyromania VFX as well is it objectively doesn't match. Mick West has admitted this as well. And I don't know why people feel the need to lie and claim that it does. It doesn't match. It's not even the same kind of event. The videos is a endothermic black event, and this is an explosion event. When you overlay it directly over the video, you can see that there is one frame that looks pretty similar. I can understand. The middle is not even at all the same, but the rest of the frames aren't even close. So the claim that's being made by the debunkers is that somebody manipulated this VFX to somehow like change all the frames around, move the pixels around, whatever. They can't actually provide a list of steps to recreate it, to make it a pixel perfect match. And my counter argument is that has never been done on this VFX before. We actually found 4 examples of this VFX being used, this stock effect, and never once has anybody manipulated it. The Killing Time video game, there was an attack on Titan, which is this very popular anime that had an advertisement that included it. It was used in the movie Starship Troopers, which is a cult classic from the 90s, and it was used in the TV show on HBO, Eastbound and Down. None of them manipulated in any way, shape, or form like this. So the assertion that this was somehow manipulated is one that needs to be proven, not one that you can just make a bare assertion and argue that this somehow proves that this was used in the videos. The endothermic event is consistent with a wormhole as shown in 3 different Defense Intelligence Agency papers, and negative energy that is required in order to produce that type of effect. And then the last debunk, the Kim.com situation, which I wouldn't really call it a debate, is the cloud picture. And I just recently posted on Twitter just earlier today, because a lot of people, this cloud image shows up in December, and it came from a 6-day-old Reddit account. There's always these anonymous 6-day-old Reddit accounts, 1-day-old Reddit accounts seem to find these. Which right away there's no credibility to it at all, because the person just immediately lied off the bat and claimed that they found this cloud image in 20 minutes of searching out of the thousands and millions of cloud images that are out there. especially because the cloud image they found in order to get to match has to be stretched out, reoriented, and stitched together in order to get it to match. But that someone was just looking at thousands of cloud images and went, "Oh, that's the one that I saw in this video." After doing that, the story makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I actually tried to reach out to this Reddit account and figure out what the real story was about how they found this, and they wouldn't tell me the truth. Then they went ahead and started. These same Redditors have actually committed felony fraud against me, just to show you how dishonest these people were. They fabricated a fake RAR file with fake metadata in it to try to perpetuate a scam against me. And then they used that to try to humiliate me back in December as well. So I just want people to realize these people are mentally unwell, and they're willing to fabricate fake evidence against the case and against me because they want this to go away that badly. It's actually a little bit scary, to be honest with you. But just going back to the cloud image itself, because we've done a lot of forensic analysis on this, the cloud image only goes back on the Wayback Machines to 2016, does not predate the videos. The website in general where it came from had an update date on December 4th, 2023, coinciding with the creation of the 6-day-old Reddit account. The website owner tried to show the background database data on this, and it only goes back even from their records to October of 2014, which is actually after the videos as well. The cloud image doesn't reverse image search back to the website, but the other images in the set do, which is extremely suspicious. The person who supposedly took the picture, who I've talked to firsthand, told us that we should look in the torrents because potentially somebody got it from a pirated torrent, and that's how they maybe got the cloud image. We looked in the torrents. This image does not exist in any torrents that are out there. So if this image was used in the videos, it would have had to have come from the website. And there's only a 70-day window between the plane disappearing and the video being published. So that means that probably less than a handful of people would have downloaded that image. And yet the website owner, none of these people are trying to find who downloaded this image, which should be suspicious for anyone who's interested. And then people on X have shown that you can take a lower quality cloud image. The argument here is that somebody simply took the video and made a cloud image out of it. And they've been able to show that you can use AI to create a higher quality image from a lower quality image in under 1 minute. I've got a video of that as well. And then some users as well. There's a lot of technical analysis that shows inconsistencies in the photo, but the biggest death blow is that somebody found the exact picture of Mount Fuji from Flickr that has the exact same angle and shadows on Mount Fuji that was seemingly added into this cloud picture that people found. And the reason why that's important is because the person who took the picture claimed to have taken it from an airplane at a very specific time in the day. So for there to be an exact same angle and shadows on this Mount Fuji from another picture is seemingly completely impossible. So that's, I think, the strongest evidence against the cloud picture, the VFX debunk, the jittery contrails debunk, and everything else that's out there. At the end of the day, whether or not you believe the videos are real or fake, nobody should be against the United States government issuing a statement on this. We've got a plane that disappeared where the official story is no one knows what happened to it. We searched in the location where everybody claims they know where it's at, and we find nothing whatsoever. The debris we find contraindicates the story that's being told to us. And these videos and the evidence that goes along with them represent more evidence than, I would say, 99.9% of murder cases that have been out there that convict somebody. We've got 2 videos, 19 witnesses. We've got a full story that explains the entire series of events. And the debunkers don't have any story that makes any sense. Like, who's the hoaxer? How did they make this? How did they know how the science worked? How did they know how to get the engineering and the plane correct? How did they know about classified military systems that nobody would have known about in 2014? Why did they not come forward to accept a $150,000 bounty that we had out there for the hoaxer to come forward with proof? It defies belief in terms of how somebody could have created these.
Okay, well, then to close out, one last question. You mentioned that you've tried to debate with Mick West multiple times, or there have been scheduled debates. If by some miracle he was to agree to come on this channel and debate you, would you be up for it?
Well, here's the thing. 4 different people have tried to do that, and he's backed out every single time. So at this point, I'm kind of moving past the debunkers and what have you. Like, I want to debate scientists on the idea that there may be an ether, and this is how we can get the negative energy requirements that we need for warp drive and a wormhole. But if it came down to it, like, he's the only guy that really has enough pedigree to even debate against at this point. But the truth is, like, I don't think he would last 5 minutes. The questions I would ask him, in terms of how he found this random VFX, how to manipulate it, I would even tell him what my questions are ahead of time. I mean, I would tell him what is the full story for who made this and why. I would ask him what he thinks happened to the plane and what evidence there is. Because when you ask these debunkers, what do you think happened to it? Like, they're happy to try to poke holes in your arguments and say that things must be fake. But then you tell them, hey, what do you think happened? Their answer is always, well, I don't know. And so this goes to show that they're not out there trying to solve the case. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make it go away. So it's possible. I can't say for sure, but it was something we'd have to work it out.
Okay. And this will be really the last question. What I like to ask people, what is the one question I should have asked you, but I neglected to?
Oh, that's a really good one. Probably, I think the thing we didn't get into too much is the science aspect. Like, how can you be sure these videos are real? And what I would say is that it's not just the body of evidence that goes along with it, this obfuscation that happened, all the witnesses and stuff, but the science checks out too and is consistent with science that's not mainstream. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden talked about something called scalar physics, which is this idea that Maxwell's equations were correct, and that when we reduced those equations, when Oliver Heaviside reduced them down from 20 to 4, we lost the scalar potential. And if you were to take two sides of a force, like this rubber band, and you were to stretch it in both directions, physics would say, well, the sum is 0. But is the sum really 0? If I stretch it a little bit, or a little bit more, or a little bit more, physics would say it's still 0. But if I stretch this more and more and more, eventually this rubber band is going to snap. And what that is the stress in the medium of this. The stress in the medium of space-time is gravity. So what we've lost when we reduced those equations is we lost the ability to manipulate gravity. And this is where Thomas Bearden's science comes into play, where this has been out there. I'm not rediscovering any science to make these videos be real. It's already been out there, and I just had to go and uncover it and say, oh, we've been talking about this for a while. This proves that that's real. And so these are the reasons why, in addition to the fact that I've talked to Navy engineer Salvatore Paez, my friend DoD contractor Dave Rossi, who work on, if not the same, very similar technologies to this, and they more or less have said that this stuff is real. So this is the reason why I'm so confident that these videos are accurate and that this science will change the world.
All right. Now, people can follow you on X, and I believe it's Ashton X Forbes.
Just X Ashton.
Oh, just X Ashton. Sorry. My mind is thoroughly blown. I hope to learn more, and I will definitely put out the word to see if I can, get any kind of conversation going. I'm personally, I just don't know. It is so far beyond my comprehension. It's almost overwhelming. But Ashton, thank you so much.
No problem. And I don't blame you. I think that anybody out there is skeptical. You have the right approach. This is so far beyond the paradigm that people should be skeptical of it and have a very high bar of evidence. And I just want people to know that I strongly believe this will be proven true in the future. Stay up to date with the most cutting edge science, and you will find out that we can manipulate gravity and manipulate space-time. It's a great time to be alive. Thanks, Eric.